NBA All-Star Game yesterday, halfway point of the NBA season. Ric Bucher, Fox Sports NBA analyst, now is joining us, been covering the NBA for over 25 years. So, I mean, I couldn't have been happier that Steph Curry, who's been kind of out of our consciousness for a couple years, wasn't in the bubble. Golden State's in a rebuild when Klay got hurt. He shows up and basically owns the weekend. You've been covering this guy for years and years. And I've said before is that whenever we start listing great players, it just always feels like Steph is just not quite put in that class. And I always argue he's the best shooter of my life. He's the best ball handler of my life. He's probably the lowest maintenance superstar of my life. And I just love the fact that he walked back into our consciousness and dominated the weekend. And I was like, yeah, that's who he is. Like, you've covered him. You ever surprised by stuff he does?
Oh, I'm surprised all the time. I mean, that's just his pregame routine and some of the places that he takes shots from just messing around. At the end, after the shot clock has gone off and he decides to flip the ball 40 feet in the air and it comes back down and hits nothing but net. I mean, there's a subtlety to what makes Steph Curry special. He's not, even with the smaller guys like an Allen Iverson, just incredibly fast. There was just something, even a small dynamic about him. Steph's is all about the skill. There's still a subtlety to what he does. He doesn't look like he's dominating, and yet his skills and his abilities, he's Steve Nash supersized in terms of what he's able to do. Steve Nash was the same way. People didn't think he was athletic, and yet his hand-eye coordination, his shooting, his basketball IQ, those are all the things that Steph has. But I will say, you are overlooking that he had a pretty good cohort with him in Damian Lillard, who was basically doing the same thing. And I think this is also part of why there's pushback on Steph, because he's a good guy, because he's an entertainer, because there's just a unique joy about how he plays the game, that he gets a lot of attention, and people are like, whoa, does he really deserve all of that attention? And if I'm in the Damian Lillard camp, and I'm not in either one, I would be saying, hey, look, Damian Lillard closed the game. Damian Lillard shot 8 for 16. Damian Lillard outscored Steph, and yet what I'm hearing on shows like Colin Cowherd's today is that this was the Steph Curry show. Like, what can we get just a little bit of balance here? It's either you don't think he's a superstar or you think he's the greatest thing that's ever happened to basketball.
No, well, I like Dame. I don't want to be a Dame hater. Blake Griffin with the Nets. First of all,
speaking of guys that you're hating on,
I'm not a Blake Griffin guy. He's a great athlete. I was always a Chris Paul over Blake Griffin with the Clippers. I would argue with my friends all the time. I'm like, one's a winning basketball player, one's a great athlete. There's a massive difference. One's a top 5 point guard ever. One's a wing guy that I still don't trust to hit a big shot or a big free throw in a big game. I'm not denying his talent. He went to Detroit. He was never healthy. Couldn't elevate him to a playoff win. I mean, what is he for Brooklyn?
Okay. First of all, he was never healthy in Detroit. He dragged them into the playoffs. And yes, they got swept in the first round by Milwaukee, but that was probably as competitive a series as you could have for a sweep. And Blake was not healthy. I think what he demonstrated there, first of all, you go from LA to Detroit and you do it happily and you embrace the challenge and you he's basically sacrificed his body in Detroit to get them to the postseason. And there's plenty of guys who go, why would I possibly do that just to get Detroit to the playoffs? So I'm not going to knock him on that. The fact of the matter is he is no longer an athlete, not in the sense that you're talking about. His strengths are that range and being able to shoot. Still his strength in terms of being able to defend bigger players and then take them out to the perimeter at the other end. Passing has always been underrated, and his basketball IQ. And maybe this is wishful thinking on my part, but I believe that he's going to get a chance to demonstrate those other elements. I've compared him to Jason Kidd, not the first Dallas iteration, but the second Dallas iteration when he went back and he was no longer an athlete. He was an orchestrator. He was a three-point shooter. That's kind of the mode that Blake Griffin is in now. And I would expect that he's going to play the 5 in their small ball lineup. It'll be Jeff Green and Blake Griffin holding that down. Is he better than Jeff Green at this point? I don't know. Possibly not. Can he give them some moments, some games in the postseason? I believe that's what they're counting on. But I've been told by people inside the organization he is going to play. This isn't just a vanity addition of a big name, that they are genuinely hoping that he is going to be able to contribute.
So LeBron, the second chapter on LeBron's legacy, the first chapter, he's great. Second chapter is he just plays forever. He never gets hurt and he plays.
Right.
But he played 13 minutes in the AllStar game. He took a game off a couple nights ago. He does look a little weathered, and LeBron would never state this. It's not his thing. He always says the right thing. But I go back to it. Once again, this was going to be Anthony Davis's year. It does look like at times LeBron realizes he's not 27 anymore, right?
No, 100%. I mean, he's been trying to manage his energy throughout this season so far, and the plan was never for him to play as many minutes or not to take any games off sooner than he did. It was simply they had no choice. It was by necessity because AD's been out and Dennis Schroeder was out, and they did have to maintain some sort of rhythm and winning a few games here and there. The All-Star game to me was where LeBron's age became more evident than ever, just in comparison to everybody else. And yeah, we got have him hitting a couple dunks, and he's shrewd and he's smart. He knew a way to kind of look like he was part of it. But I think one of the reasons why he benched himself was because you got these guys just firing threes from everywhere. He's a confident shooter when it comes to three. He missed his first one or two, and he's like, okay, this ain't my day there. And then you got Giannis just crushing everything on the inside. He's like, yeah, I'm not like that. And I don't want to look like Domantas Sabonis, who looks completely like a fish out of water in this game. So you know what? Let me get a dunk or two, and then I'm just going to let my team roll, and I'll save my energy for the end of the season. But the difference in athleticism between LeBron and the rest of those young guns and the way the game is played now, what makes it exciting, which is the three-point shot, it was as definitive and as stark as I've seen. I think he's done a good job of hiding it or minimizing it up to this point. But the All-Star game was like, wow, these guys are 6, 7, 8 years younger than he is, or they have a skill set that's more attuned to the way the game is being played right now.
Yeah. Finally, I think the All-Star game, I think they did a good job on it. I think the Pro Bowl's unwatchable. I actually like the dunk contest was kind of quirky, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good. I sat and watched it for a couple hours. I like the thing they do at the end of the game where they have a score target and you hit 170. Okay, game's over. Let's go home. I kind of like it. They got a bunch of quirky stuff. I think it works. I mean, it's an All-Star game. It doesn't count, so let's make it a little quirky. What's your takeaway on the whole event?
Yeah, look, I like the quarter by quarter. I think it maintains a certain competitive edge. The adding 24 at the end makes it interesting. I mean, the bottom line is that the All-Star weekend to me was reflective of where the game has gone, and that it was all about three-point shooting. More than 60% of the shots in the game were three-pointers. Giannis didn't miss a shot, and yet it was all Steph Curry and Damian Lillard and who's going to knock down the next three from 45 feet. They've added elements to the three-point shooting contest. The three-point shooting contest was far and away the most entertaining and competitive event of the weekend. Now, my question is this going to be what wins the championship this year? Is it going to be three-point shooting? Is it going to be three-point shooting from 35 feet? Like, generally, it goes back to defense. It goes back to principles. But this has been a weird year, and I just wonder whether this is a reflection. The All-Star game and All-Star weekend is a reflection that the NBA is pivoting toward, we're just going to run up and down, and we're going to be hoisting 30-footers, and whoever makes the most 30-footers wins. Because this is the other part with Steph and his rise, is that the game is not physical at all anymore. When I got guys begging for foul calls in the All-Star game, I know that this league has gotten incredibly soft.
Ric Bucher joining us. Good talking to you, bud. Thanks.
You got it.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.